go?
Yep.
We are. Okay, with that, we'll call our meeting to order. And we're looking for additions and deletions to the agenda, corrections. I believe we have some. We're gonna move. Right.
From tonight's agenda.
That would be appropriate,
I will
probably.
do that, yes.
Okay.
What would be the, I mean, we can just take him off and. Is that
Why don't we just remove him for tonight, if that's okay with you?
Sure,
Just remove
that's
him from
fine.
the, change the
Yeah, let's
agenda, and we'll
remove him.
accept the
Yeah.
agenda as.
I'm sure
amended.
that'll help his self-esteem
Would that
a
be
lot.
simple enough? Straightforward, we can just add him next time.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, anybody else? Table, did we get a second? I don't. You did, okay, thank you, Michelle. So you have a motion and support, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion is carried, we have an amended agenda. Thank you very much. Roll has been taken? Correct, all right, we'll move on to pledge of allegiance. If everyone please rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Next up, January 10, 2023 organizational meeting and the January 10, 2023 regular session meeting.
I assume it's with the correction
Your
of
pleasure.
the organizational meeting minutes?
Pardon me?
The corrections made in the organizational meeting minutes?
They haven't been yet, I don't believe. We need to approve them as corrected. They were printed, the corrected version?
No, the
No.
ones that showed up in the packet are the ones that had the mistakes.
Okay. But the ones that are on the seats, are those corrected? So that people know what the corrections are out there?
They have the agendas, they don't have the minutes.
Oh, they don't have minutes, okay, sorry about that. So I think we all got them electronically though, myself.
Yes.
So your motion was to accept the minutes as the corrected version, or with the corrections that were made, that were handed out earlier, right?
I wasn't sure if the correction was made prior to this meeting.
No, it was
We
not.
didn't need to make the
No.
motion, so I can
Correction
make
was
the
made
motion
afterwards.
to have the correction.
Okay, I think that's clear then, so thank you.
Support.
And we have support. Any last comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no. The motion is carried and we have minutes. Very good. Next up, we are to consider a resolution of appreciation for our former Commissioner Audra Stahl.
Move to that.
Support.
And motion is support. Okay, let's, Audra, would you mind joining us up front?
Sure.
Citizen
Citizen.
Yes, I prefer my full name.
Well, wherever you want to sit.
I-
All right, so we got a resolution first.
We got to do it first.
Yeah. So we have a resolution of appreciation for you as a former commissioner. Whereas Audra Stahl has faithfully served the city of Alma as commissioner since January 1st, 2019. And whereas Audra has played a key role in the economic and community development of Alma throughout her tenure on the commission, and through such projects as the neighborhood street projects on Hannah Avenue, Pleasant Avenue, Ferris Street, approval of a planned unit development for the former middle school property, the City Park restroom reconstruction rehabilitation project, development in the downtown area including the Wright Lapine Opera House, creation of a new upper story apartment units, a hotel, and the rehabilitation of the parking lots 4 and 8, which included the first 2 electric vehicles charging stations in Alma, in the public lots at least, so. Whereas Audra has supported the intergovernmental relations within the county with developing with the neighboring cities of St. Louis, Ithaca, and Pine River Township, and the expansion of the Alma transportation system through the local advisory committee working closely with Slipper, ensuring the success of the expanded service. And whereas Audra has supported the successful passage of a new 6-year neighborhood street improvement initiative and grants strengthening the Alma Public Safety, Public Works, Library, Information Technology, and Transportation Departments. And whereas Audrey has carried out her fiduciary responsibilities during COVID, one of the city's and nation's most trying times, serving the community virtually to maintain transparency and the services provided to the citizens of Alma. And whereas Audrey supported the many community events, including but not limited to the Alma Highland Festival and Games, Lucky McDuck, the US 127 Car Tour, the Back to the Bricks Tour, the Alma College and Alma High School homecoming parades, the Alma All-Class Reunion, Come Home to Alma for the Holidays, the newly created Alma Alive, and the MSU Connecting Entrepreneurial Communities Conference, bringing over 75 communities to Alma for the day and a half of learning. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Alma City Commission, city staff, and citizens of the Alma community express their heartfelt gratitude for the contributions of Audra Stahl throughout her tenure as an elected official for the city of Alma, and further extend their wishes for her continued success once she again becomes a private citizen following the expiration of her term, which was December 31st, 2022. Be it further proclaimed that this resolution be presented to Commissioner Stahl at the January 24th, 2023 City Commission meeting, and that this resolution be entered in the official minutes of the City of Alma Commission.
Ooh, I was busy.
Thank you very much. Yes, you are. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know. Thanks.
Bye, see you later.
I don't have to stay, so I'm gonna slip out. Take care, you guys.
See ya, bye.
Okay, that was a lot.
Yeah.
Busy ladies.
That was only 4 years.
Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no. Thankfully it passed because we gave it the board already. Okay, we scrubbed Mr. Piccolo, so our next item is consideration of resolution adopting the poverty exemption guidelines for the City of Alma Board of Review to implement, which includes the maximum asset standards.
Move to adopt.
Support.
Okay, motion support. You want to give some background for the camera?
Yep, definitely.
Please?
This is something we do on a yearly basis. This year, the exemption amount for assets did go down from 5,000 to 2,000. And in the newsletter, I did kind of list out a few items that are considered assets underneath the policy. Second home, land, vehicles, recreational vehicles such as campers, motorhomes, boats, Arctic ATVs, buildings other than the residence, jewelry, antiques, artworks, basically value that is beyond the home, the principal residence that the person owns, and one vehicle that they can use for work and a personal use. Anyone within the residence, also an adult, may have a car that's not counted toward these assets also. Obviously, the state of Michigan's tightened down on it from, previous it was 5,000 down to 2,000. Obviously, they're not looking to provide exemptions, make sure they get, the locals get their tax dollars that they're entitled to. That was one of the big changes, and further on our agenda later on, City of Alma will be going under, which used to be called AMAR, which is an audit of our assessing records and assessing policies. It is now the State of Michigan Tax Commission assessment audit, and we'll be undergoing that in 2024. So later in the agenda, we have some policies that we're adopting to make sure that we're up to date and current, so when auditors come in 2024, that we're good to go there. So, but again, this is a yearly thing, and we'll see it again this time next year also.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Who has the first question?
Eric, does the second home and vehicles and stuff, is that anywhere or is that only in the city?
Anyway,
Anywhere, so,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Yep.
I have
It's a maximum amount of assets they can have in order to get this exemption, so.
so they're basically saying that if you have those assets You should liquidate them to pay your taxes before the,
Thank you.
before they're given the exemption.
We have a motion. Anybody else? Last chance. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. The motion is carried. Thank you. Moving down to number 4, consideration of a resolution to allow local resident taxpayers to protest in writing to the Elma Board of Review regarding assessments from the first Tuesday in March until it adjourns from public hearings. It's your pleasure.
Move to adopt.
Support?
Motion support. Any background?
Again, this is something we do on a yearly basis. If someone can't make it to a board of review, they can bring their case to the board of review in writing. So they can be there without being in person, they can send it in, and the board of review will review the information in the parcel and make their judgment from there. So,
And we have to do the resolution every year?
yes.
Otherwise, the people have to come in person, right?
Yes, correct.
Which is, I think, what it used to be, so.
Yes. Every municipality does this, from cities, townships, all the way through, so. Yep.
All the techniques, okay. Anybody else? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. The motion is carried. Thank you. Moving down to reports of officers, boards, and committees, the commissioners may receive the following reports by one resolution, or any commissioner may remove any item from within the section for individual discussion and vote. Tonight, we have presented the Elma Police Department 2022 Annual Report, the Code Enforcement 2022 Annual Report, the Elma Transit December 2022 Report, the Planning Commission January 9, 2023 Draft Minutes, the Gratiot Area Water Authority January 13, 2023 Draft Minutes, and the City Manager's Report. Your pleasure in receiving those items.
Move to receive 1 through 5.
Support. Did you want to do anything, Gallo, Roxanne, or just the minutes?
I think that, well, I was trying to think if it was anything other than what, I mean, I think, I don't have anything in addition to what is in the minutes. So,
Okay.
the draft minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion support on the table for items 1 through 5 for receipt. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Okay. Well, now I entertain a motion to receive item number 6, the City Manager's Report, which Michelle's pulled.
Move to receive number 6, the city manager report.
We have a motion support. Eric, would you like to go over it, please?
Yes, we had a question from Commissioner Harrington last meeting, and Commissioner comments about timing, how time it takes to get children home through the dial-a-ride system or the Alma transportation system. Speaking with the director and going through what it typically happens through the process out there, we have one bus that's dedicated to Loose Road School, and it's just the students that get on there from the school. The driver arrives there from 2:55 to 3:05 p.m. The bus is then loaded along with the rest of the buses from the school district. Our buses don't leave until all the other school buses leave for to take everyone home. And around, that typically takes us 3:15, 3:20 is when we start heading into the neighborhoods to take the kids home. Usually we have between 11 and 17 students on the bus that are receiving a ride from ATC. Currently, the families using ATC are all within the city limits, so we're not taking anybody outside this, into Heimer Township or Ithaca or St. Louis at this point. The time that the student may be on there does vary, depending on which ones are riding that day, the driver, and the driver makes the decision on which student to drop off first, so depending on who may be on there, that's where they may drop off. We also drop off only on the right-hand side, so the student exited to the curb, so they're not crossing the street, so that sometimes can make you go around a whole city block to make another drop off for the student. Also, it also depends on if we have a new driver, which we do. Sometimes we do get some new drivers, and they're not used to the route, or haven't gotten used to the kids yet where they live. That may take a little longer. Our policy is, stop all stop signs, obey all traffic laws. That's the first thing. Safety, slow is better as long as we're doing all those things. and it's a little slower with, new people that are, on the route. The longest period of time a student has ridden the last month, according to our records. Last student was dropped off between 4 o'clock and 4:15, which basically puts us at about an hour once we leave, Lewisfield School, for the drop-off. Again, it just depends. Sometimes, a student might be first or second or third, depending on who else may be on there and the driver making their route. So it's not a set route each time they go to pick up the kids each and every day, like a school bus would be a set route, so.
And I appreciate all that information, and but I wanted to make it clear, my concern wasn't quickness over safety. It was that ATC employees are telling customers it's because of slipper, and
That
that's
is not-
incorrect.
that is-
Right. So my suggestion was perhaps educate your employees, that that's not the reason, that this is the reason.
And-
Because that was what parents were telling me, that they were told, it's because we've expanded to St. Louis and Ithaca and Pine River Township, and that is why. And I suspected that was incorrect, but I didn't want to say that, and so, I mean, I appreciate this, but I want to be clear, I'm not asking for quickness over safety. I just wanted them to be giving the correct information to customers, that it's not in fact because we've expanded.
And I thought this was a good opportunity also, like, an educational
Mhm.
process too, because hopefully someone's reading a newsletter
Right.
or watching it
Yep.
on TV that we could talk about it, so
Yep.
they know it's not just coming from, because
Right.
sometimes, that's, the bus driver might have said, well, we got a bigger route, now we have slipper, and so we're being told, four different ways, this is not my usual route, so, that,
Mhm. Right,
so.
Yep.
We just thought it'd be a good time to
yes, no,
bring it
that's
back
very
in
right
front
on,
of the
thank you.
public and let everybody know, so. But I will make sure Brett passes that along to
Okay, thank you.
the rest of the staff. So. Our yard waste truck. Back in 2009, we purchased a used garbage truck, an old style one where rear dump. And the idea behind it was a couple things. One, to help on a workers' comp, instead of guys having to throw the bags up and into flatbed trucks, to just put it into a lower level trash vehicle. Also, that this had the compaction capability, so those flatbeds, we'd have to run back to the yard waste site for dumping multiple times throughout a day's pickup. So that actually worked out very well for us. It did cut down on workers' comp claims, and it did speed up the program for pickups because we didn't have to run back and forth to the yard waste site. Well, it was a used truck, the 2002, currently has 18,389 hours on it. And the staff did provide some photos of the body of the truck and things like that, where it's at currently. Just to keep it operational at this point, we're looking at an investment of $54,800 to do seals, some body work, replacing chairs, doors, seats, not chairs, but seats in the vehicle. But like with everything else, we're looking at options. We basically budgeted about $90,000 to replace this truck. That's based upon what we kind of did with this truck back in 2009, and add a little bit for inflation, but things have gone quite a bit with COVID and purchasing vehicles. We have been on the lookout for a few months for something like what we bought in 2009, a used garbage truck. The one that was available was way out in California, so that's decided not to really pursue something along those lines. A new vehicle along those lines for trash vehicles, they're making them much bigger. Like in our case here with Granger being our new hauler, you'll notice the trucks are very large, mechanized, so one truck, one person doing all the pickups. So they're not really making those old school trash trucks where they're manual based, where you have rear dump capabilities. So what the Public Works staff has come up with is looking at a 2-ton pickup. and then putting on it a rear loader 8-yard attachment to the back of it. Kind of like what we do with our flatbeds, we get a chassis and then put salt bin on the back for street plowing. What we have come up with is a 2-ton Ram 550 under the My Deal program. The truck itself is running $64,993, which is $65,000. The loader that would be needed for the yard waste pickup is $76,400, and then there's another $3,000 added on for freight, post-delivery inspection, those types of things. So the total cost of a truck of this type takes us up to $144,393. Obviously, what we budgeted was for $90,000 for replacement of what we have there. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to touch a truck for $90,000 at all. So we have another, probably 4 or 5 months before April kicks around and the yard waste pickup begins again. We're gonna have to do one of two things. One, spend the $54,000, almost $55,000 in the upgrades of the current truck, and we still have a 2002 garbage truck. Or we look at making the extra investment out of our solid waste fund, yard waste fund, to purchase a 2-ton truck with this loader in the back, which the public works staff feels would work just fine for the yard waste program. Would provide them the capabilities that the old truck did with not having to throw it up into a flatbed, and plus provide a compaction that on a typical yard waste pickup route that they might have to only dump once or twice without that compaction. So that's kind of where we're at with that. If we do want to proceed and move forward, staff will come back with an RFP proposal and a budget amendment to the extra funds coming out of the solid waste fund and the motor pool fund to get that truck ready for April for the yard waste program to kick off again at that point. So the yard waste, we don't think about it right now because it's cold outside, but as soon as April hits, it's a weekly pickup and it adds up quick. And code enforcement would be very, it's a big help to code enforcement too, because that stuff sitting out there more than a week causes issues there. So anyway, we thought we'd get that in the newsletter, get that in front of you for your consideration and any feedback you may have.
What do the yard waste and motor pool funds look like now?
We can afford to take the extra $54,393 out of it. It is there. And like I said, the truck is exclusively used for yard waste pickup, so, yep, so it's nothing general fund, but there is funds there available to pay for the extra.
Is it safe to say, since it's a 2002, we spend $54,000 and it only lasts us
Yeah.
who knows how long?
There's no guarantee on that.
Exactly, and the new one you're talking about, how many years warranty would that have on it?
Well, the warranty itself would be with the truck, probably a 3-year warranty with the truck itself. I'm not sure what's on the compactor, the loader on the back. But seeing that our guys were able to, a 2002 truck, they bought it in 9, and now we're just replacing it. We could safely assume we'll probably get 20 years out of this truck.
You're pretty good with duct tape, huh?
Well, the newer one, we got it used, so.
Yeah, I know,
brand
that's
new,
what I mean.
So I would assume we would have a good 20 years on it easily, because it wouldn't be driving in the wintertime with the salt and things like that. It's just be used for always pickup, so.
Just out of curiosity, the one we didn't pursue in California, what was the price on that?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
I don't recall that, to be honest with you. It was just a matter of travel and getting it here. It wasn't just a possible. I'm sorry, coming up to this. That one we didn't pursue because of the logistics of getting it back here. This last one we bought in 2009, I believe the crew went to Wisconsin and picked this up and drove it across and back, so it was more cost productive. The other thing with replacing this one is the pictures, I believe, that were attached to the newsletter, those are the frame that's rotten. So it's more than just body, that's the actual structural frame. And we're just concerned we can't get another year out of this by the time you put in grass, and if it's wet, the frame very likely could break in half. So kind of pushed it to its life expectancy at this point.
Does it make sense to put this, 'cause I assume this 550 truck is, so it's like our flatbeds, those big ones? Would it make more sense to put one of those older trucks, put this unit on the back of one of those older trucks?
This truck is actually not the same, so this one we're proposing,
Yeah.
it's not the same size as those flat racks, it would be similar in, I think what Eric was talking about is, this one would have a standard type pickup truck cab on it, and it's got the longer frame, so you'd mount that to it. The thing with the size of this one is a little bit smaller than the current one we have. The reason it's smaller is availability. The other one is easier for the crew to get in and out of, and we don't need something big. If we go big, we run out of space in the shop, so that's kind of the reason why we're looking at this one. They're getting fewer and harder to find.
Have we looked at any cab chassis from previous model year that are still technically new?
Yes, we've looked at those, and I think that that's what those prices included. I don't recall what those were, but we looked at buying the chassis cab, and then buying the dump loader, and it's actually more expensive than to buy it fully assembled like this. By the time we bought the chassis and the cab, then bought the dump truck, the actual back portion of it, it was more expensive than buying this. And then you have to have it installed on top of that.
And we've also looked at used trucks.
Yes, this is the only one we could find was in California. They've looked for the
No, I
last,
mean,
I'm
used
sorry.
pickup trucks. sorry.
Oh. It's,
Instead of a brand new one, you know, like some of those leased have 10,000 miles on them and they're $20,000.
no, these are not
Typically with the
standard
5500, you
pickups.
can't
These are-
use, correct, the 5500.
These are, custom chassis. If you're familiar with that, it's not a standard pickup or anything, they just leave the box.
I just didn't know if they had used ones.
That's right.
And if I recall, because I believe I was here back then, you know, when we bought that used one of the reasons we went used at that point in time was because we weren't sure if the whole process was going to, if it would be a good system to pick up the RVs, so I guess that alleviates my, you know, it's been very successful. I have less concern about investing this kind of money in something that's, we know is a proven success, so. What's the capacity of this compared to the one you got, as far as yards?
It's,
A little smaller?
yes, it's about 3/4 the size, between half and 3/4 the size. So what we do right now is we'll dump once in the morning, typically they'll dump during the break. This one, we might have to dump it twice in the morning, and then probably once in the afternoon, possibly twice in the afternoon, just depending on what the loads are. So we might have to dump it one more time than we normally do, so instead of dumping once, we dump this twice.
Okay.
And that's kind of our options that we can't, they just don't make those size, garbage trucks anymore, so this is one way we can do it. And with the price of vehicles, I was surprised we could get one as quick as we could to get it ready.
The surprise was this was on my deal, and it's actually sitting in Detroit, so that was what was even more surprising. There was one that's what we were looking to have. Unfortunately, there's new, if we could find used, that would definitely be an option. And Greg's right, that was a trial period back 13 years ago, it's been now, so.
Hey, other questions or comments? You don't know anybody with a bunch of used trucks, do you, Michelle?
They got the big ones. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit, State Street lease with Century Healthcare. They've been leasing with the city since 2015. Currently, they're renting the 221 North State Street address, which used to be, their current lease rate is $578.50 per month, and they are responsible for the taxes on the 2,314 square feet and all the utilities with the space. The proposed lease rate is $771 per month, and then of course they still continue to pay the taxes and all the utilities for that. So we'd like to rent it for another 3 years, but we thought like all the leases that that come up, we bring them back to the commission here and try to get them in the newsletter first to discuss it, and then if you're comfortable with that, we bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay, who's the first question? Comes to mind, how does this compare to this price per square foot that we've got on the other leases?
This one's on the high end. This was $3, this now would be $4 a square foot. Like we discussed before, when we talked about the gym, MSU Extension, we did a real good deal many years ago with them. That whole space there, it's a little bit bigger than this one here. That one's $500 a month, they pay the utilities on that. So that one is well below $4, it's probably around the $2.30 per square foot. So when theirs comes up, obviously we can bump that one up. And we just did the gym's lease last year. We have 2 more years on that particular lease. But this one would be the, on a square foot basis, the highest lease that we've had in that area.
The only other thing, I guess from my perspective, I'll once again advocate that we put the property up for sale and stop becoming landlords or stop acting as landlords. I'd much rather see the properties in private hands and have a taxpayer managing that. I don't think we're the greatest landlords since we seem to lose money on that on an annual basis. It costs us money to own that, even with all these rents.
Basically, we cover our operations. We don't cover like a depreciation, that sort of thing, but we basically cover our operation.
So that would be my advice. If the rest of the commission ever wants to explore it, I'd certainly encourage everybody to consider the fact that we probably ought to sell that. So.
We've talked about that several times before. We should not be in the business of being landlords if we can get out of it. If it were to be a buyer for that building, jump on it.
Then just for the general public, also the Gratiot Downtown Art Expo, the banners in the downtown, is accepting entries. So that is available on our Facebook page. We do have some copies here that you can pick up. March 1st is the deadline for your entries. So cool program has been going on since 2011. Can't believe we've been doing it that long. So good program.
A great program, yes, absolutely. Anybody have questions for Eric? Okay, with that, we do have a motion on the table to accept this report. All those in favor would be yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. We accept the report. Thank you, Eric. Okay, now I'll get back to page 1 here. So, unfinished business, we have consideration of a resolution to appoint a commissioner to replace Commissioner Warnick on the Alma Fire District Fire Board. The Alma Fire District Fire Board, okay. Just say that just right to make sense for me. Does anybody care to volunteer their time on this one?
Is this still the time that you told us?
We're, in our last meeting, we discussed moving this to, was it Wednesday night?
Wednesday
morning at 7 a.m., yes.
Still out.
At 7 a.m. Just so the board knows, we did meet yesterday afternoon. We did make 2 more steps. We did approve amongst all the partners the agreement for the fire board itself between us and the other 4 townships. Yesterday, we were able to approve both the proposed fire budget for our coming fiscal year. They're ahead of us a little bit. Their fiscal year starts in April. But for would be our 2023-2024 fiscal year, and also approve the proposed budget for the rescue. But I was hoping after that we could get 2 quarterly meetings. We had one other item on the agenda, which was a bid that came for a replacement pumper, engine 3. We were looking to replace that, and so we received only 1 bid for the spec that went out. We had a lengthy discussion about that. The vote basically came down to reject the bid, and it was 4-2. The townships voted to reject the bid and rebid, and then myself and the mayor voted to accept, voted no against that motion. So our fire staff is currently working on the bid to see how they could accommodate some of the comments that were made there, that why did you only receive one bid? I think a lot of it has to do with what we just got done talking about, even on the yard waste truck. It's a tight market out there, and if folks don't have to, our request was more of a custom truck than you could just typically build. So they're not out there scrambling for work out there right now. So that's what came down there. So if we could have taken care of that yesterday, we wouldn't need it to meet coming up here in February. But I would assume we'll be meeting in February, and I'm hoping that that will do that, and then we can go up for, put the bids back out again, and then move on with a purchase of a new pumper for that, for engine 3, so.
I can step on the board. Not me.
Before she changes her mind, huh?
Somebody seconded.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second, so anybody else care to? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no? Michelle didn't say no, so cool. Thank you, Michelle, we appreciate it.
It's a fun group, to be honest. I wish I could make the meetings.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and
I couldn't make the Mondays, but if it changed to Wednesdays, I can, because Monday I'm out of town for work, so.
glad it worked out, so. There'll be other opportunities for you, Dan, I'm sure. We'll find other committees and boards that you can
You
serve
can
with.
convince them to meet at 6 o'clock in the morning, that'd be all right.
Hey, we tried, because I would be more than happy to meet at 6 AM, that's not a problem for me.
This is the time when the commission met at 6 o'clock.
Yes. Okay, moving down to new business, consideration of a resolution to approve the assessor's office accessibility policy and procedures for granting and removing real property exemptions. Your pleasure.
Move to approve.
Support.
Your motion support, any background?
Just
We
we talked about
other
it in
things,
the
so-
newsletter, and these are 2 policies that will help us out 2024 in the states here for our audit.
Okay. Questions for that? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no? Motion's carried. Thank you, approve that. So thank you Kathy and her team for all the work on that one. I know that's a big deal. Next up, Mr. Brown is on the agenda to give us a presentation. If you please go to the
Thank you.
podium and share your information with us.
Mayor, City Commissioners, thank you for your time this evening, and Sarah and Eric, thank you for getting me on the agenda. My name is Steve Brown, my wife Joanne and I own property at 308 Walnut, here in Elma. And what I'd like to speak with you about this evening is a house that's in the neighborhood, close to our house. Sarah, everyone got a copy of the packet that I sent? Thank you. So, the 2 Gratiot Avenue, which is on the northeast corner of Gratiot and Walnut. So we're just across the street, down one house from that. This dwelling has been vacant for a period of at least 15 years. Some people familiar with the neighborhood think it may be more like 20 years. And I and my neighbors believe that it presents a health, safety, and economic concerns to us. So, a summary of the current situation, as seen from the street, the dwelling is in significant disrepair. It also undoubtedly affects the property values of our places in the neighborhood. I have a few pictures here, pictures 1 through 5, which shows the siding deteriorating and falling off. It shows the wooden trim rotting, peeling paint, large trees going up adjacent to the foundation of the house. There's even the front storm door that's open most of the time and blows back and forth when the wind blows. there's oftentimes trash present on the front porch. So again, if you look at pictures 1 through 5 in your packet, you can see what I'm talking about here. In addition to the general disrepair and deteriorated condition of the property, there are now feral cats that live inside the house. If you take a look at picture 6, you can actually see one of the photos that was taken by a neighbor that shows a cat in the house. And we do see cats all over the neighborhood. They roam the neighborhood at all hours of the day and night, damaging landscaping. My wife's a gardener. They use her landscaping and flower beds as a litter box. You can imagine how happy she is about that. Enter our garages. They can be heard fighting in the middle of the night. And I believe they are a potential threat to the health and safety of the homeowners in the neighborhood. I myself was approached rather aggressively by one of them, which makes me wonder whether the thing was even sick or not. So we're very concerned about the feral cats that roam the neighborhood. Additionally, the property taxes are routinely delinquent and only paid on the eve of tax foreclosure. I went to the Gratiot GIS and printed out, which would be the other attachments I think that you have in your packet. And from what I can understand, I'm not an expert reading this, but the taxes haven't been paid going back to summer 2019. Periodically, we'll see stickers on the front door that show that the thing is going through the tax foreclosure process, I guess we'd call it. And then evidently taxes get paid enough to get the sticker off, and then on it goes. So, given the occupancy of the dwelling by feral cats and probably other vermin, it's likely that the dwelling has long been unfit for human occupancy. I have been in contact with Mr. Carr, our city enforcement officer, code enforcement officer, I'm not sure that was the term. In advisement of these concerns, I do know that he's tried to contact the owner, and the last time I talked to him, which was 2-3 months ago, he had been unsuccessful to establish contact with the dwelling's owner. So, that's kind of the situation that we have here. I'm quite certain that this situation violates several city ordinances. So, actually, took the opportunity to look up the ordinances that I got to through the city website. And, I guess number one, you have this all in detail in the text here, and I don't know if we want to go through every bit of it, but, section 12-87A of the city ordinance, whenever a building or structure used or intended to be used for dwelling purposes because of dilapidation, decay, damage, or faulty construction management, or otherwise unsanitary or unfit for human habitation, or the condition is likely to cause sickness or disease when so determined by the health officer, or is likely to cause injury to the health, safety, and general welfare of those living with them. I think the building clearly falls into that category. As such, the city is empowered to give notice of the order that defects be remedied. If the owner fails to comply, the city may bring an action in circuit court to get them to abate the condition. And actually, as I understand it, the owner can be prosecuted for a misdemeanor, being in violation of the ordinance. Another second ordinance, section 22-123-4, any structure or part thereof which because of fire, wind, or other natural disaster, or merely by virtue of physical deterioration is no longer habitable as a dwelling or useful for any other purpose. I don't think feral cat homes are included in that. For which it may have originally been intended for 30 days. So, again, there are fines and, as I understand it, civil infractions that can be levied against the owner for the conditions that violate that section of the code. And then thirdly, the dwelling violates the International Property Maintenance Code, section 1244, 301.3. Vacant
structures and premises thereof or vacant land shall be maintained in a clean, safe, secure, and sanitary condition as provided herein, so as not to cause a blighting problem or adversely affect the public health or safety. And again, there are provisions for enforcing and consequences for the owner, as I understand it. So, in my opinion, they're clearly in violation of at least 3 different city ordinances and have been for quite some time. So, as a final summary, we, and I say we, my wife and I and our neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Vandeweghe here, also in the neighborhood, have signed a letter that expresses our concerns as described above. If you see attachment 1, you'll see a list of some of the folks that I did a quick canvass of the neighborhood, and they were unanimously enthusiastic about, let's get something done with this place. So, we ask that the City of Elmwood begin proceedings to force the absentee owner to correct the many conditions that violate the ordinances. And I'm sure it's for the good of the Walnut Gratiot neighborhood and the City of Elmwood as a whole, to have this corrected. So, that's what I'm concerned about, that's what I'm here to ask you to help me about, and if you have any questions.
Anybody have questions? I thank you very much for bringing it to our attention, although I'm sure several others, I know I've been aware of that particular dwelling for a number of years. I used to live in your neighborhood,
So I
actually
understand.
in the house that you currently own.
Really?
That's a great house,
I
yeah.
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
It's a beauty.
Many years ago, but.
Thanks for not painting the woodwork inside.
No, I love the woodwork in that house, and you guys have done a way better job of taking care of it than we did.
Thank you, thank you.
It's a beautiful house.
Steve, do we know anything about the current owner? I see it's a couple that lives in Diamonddale.
Well, I think it's a lady.
A lady?
The lady is Jeanette Workman Murray, as best I can understand that. She lives down in the Lansing area. I know Eric has tried, Michael has tried repeatedly to get in contact with her.
It's long overdue. This is.
Yeah, but
there's
I just wondered if we knew
there's no
anything about it. It's
point.
not owned by a corporation or anything, it's owned by.
And I know there are some properties in Elmwood that don't look as good as we'd like them to, or in not great condition, but to me, the feral cat pushes it way over the edge.
That is,
I mean,
I know other than the houses that we've actually taken down for that very reason. So.
I can stand in my driveway, look towards the road, and I'll bet it's not 5 minutes that I don't see a cat somewhere roaming around on the neighbors' porches, in our garages, whatever.
Mr. Mayor, may I? Thank you. Just briefly, I was going to say I'd be happy to work with Eric and code enforcement on any aspect of this matter. There are a few options that the city has. As the gentleman stated, the city is available to issue a action in circuit court to proceed that way. There's also a district court action that we could initiate, which is the process that we talked about, I believe, last meeting, to provide us with another option as far as court enforcement goes. And then thirdly, there's a process under Michigan's housing code for what's called a dangerous building hearing, where a independent magistrate, as it were, who can just be an unaffiliated building official, or actually even someone with the city, serves as the magistrate and essentially issues an order on how the property is required to be made safe and the different things that are to be done. So I'd be happy to work with Eric and sort of lay out the options and then present them to the city commission so we can determine the best path to move forward.
Great. Do you mind if I comment on Adam's suggestion? Well, I can wait till something
Yeah,
comes.
it's probably more appropriate later, since you're not on the agenda. So unless you're representing Mr. Brown on this, or is it
Advising would be.
advising? Okay. Probably best we wait then. That's right. So, yeah, have you laid out a plan yet, Eric, or?
No, we have not.
Okay.
Mike has been trying to get in touch, to start that way. Obviously, we did pass the injunctive relief ordinance to help with circumstances like this. We don't have to necessarily go all the way to circuit court to put a little more teeth into our ordinances and things like
I
that.
think there's this one, and I know of at least one others, and there's probably more that we need to become more aggressive with.
Well,
They've just been too many years, and
as part of our goal setting, one of the items to discuss is these types of things, because we do have others in the community that are, and this is bad shape, and to be upfront, I live right across from the street from this house, I have for 20 years, so, that it's not a pleasant, looking house, but we do have other homes in the community that are actually structurally in worse shape, that aren't occupied either. So we need to talk about that as a goal setting, and, because it will cost dollars, because if you get to a certain point, then you talk about dangerous buildings, it gets to the point where you either, do you demo, that sort of.
Yes, well, and my feeling is you do, because it's costing us all dollars right now anyway in property values. So you pay one way, you pay the other, and I just soon pay to have it cleaned up.
I would appreciate if you would bring that back to us after you do some investigating, that would be great, and then we can just discuss it at that time. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Is there a way for me to keep track of what's going on here, what kind of progress is being made, what would be the best way to do it?
What we'll do, Steve, is next meeting, we'll bring back a initial plan to the commission, so that'll be all public record.
Next meeting, like 2 weeks from now?
2 weeks from now.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, next item is the presentation of the fiscal year, well, I guess we need a motion to receive that before going. Or receive the presentation.
Support.
Motion support, any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a presentation of the fiscal year 2022 comprehensive annual financial report by Ally Barnes of Yo and Yo. Take it away, Ally.
I know, you just want to save the best for last.
Nothing like having an auditor.
That's right, well, it was a great audit year, actually, so hopefully this will be one of my shorter presentations. So with that, we'll get started here. Hopefully I'm gonna do this right on the screen. Oh, it's very touchy. Okay, there we go. I might not do this quite right, so forgive me. All right, so the city hires annually an audit firm to come in and look at your financial statements, your internal controls and your processes, and check compliance of various financial aspects of the city's system. That's just a quick synopsis of what we do. At the end of that, we issue an opinion, and what you want us to issue is what is on the screen here, which is an unmodified or clean opinion. And that means that within the financial statements that have been presented to you and to the public, we believe that the information has been presented fairly in accordance with the accounting standards you have to follow, and we do not believe there are any material adjustments that need to be made within those statements. So overall, that's the good news on the financial statements from the opinion level. We're gonna do just kind of a very high level overview of a couple of your major funds, and then we'll talk about internal control related matters. So here, for your reference, are the revenues in the general fund for the past 4 fiscal years. So you'll see that the property taxes make up the majority, then we have some intergovernmental revenues, and then much smaller percentage are charges for services, and then just some miscellaneous revenues. So property taxes have remained relatively flat from the prior year. Your intergovernmental funds, given the pandemic and all of the extra federal dollars flowing through, this is not surprising to see this down and up and back down. It depends on which fund you're putting some of this money into, whether you have any consistency in intergovernmental revenue. For you, the reason that it decreased is because in the previous year, you had about $260,000 in CARES funding that was recorded in general fund. And then you also had a $50,000 grant from MEDC. And neither of those were received or recorded in 2022 within the general fund. On the charges for services, there was a small change in the accounting for the dollars that you charge to your other funds. So general fund employees in the finance department and IT specifically, those 2 areas used to be in a separate internal service fund. And then we moved those, by we, I mean the city moved those into the general fund and charged the other funds from there. So So in 2021 is where we see the biggest impact of moving those people over. And so we showed gross amounts for what was charged, and this year, because it's better financial presentation to show it net, so we have a true cost in the general fund, we've done that. So on this slide, you'll see charges for services decreased. If I can get it to go just right. Oh, sorry. On this slide, if we look at the expenditure side, you'll see under fiscal services, how it also decreased year over year. So that's really just the impact of netting those revenues and expenses. Okay, on the general fund side, total revenues this year were about $5 million, just a little bit more in total. So then on the expenditure side, you spend the majority of your funds in community safety. No surprise there, that is typically where most of my communities are spending the largest percentage of their general fund dollars. You'll see the amount spent did decrease some from the previous year. I think there was a little bit of money spent related to those federal grants that came in within community safety in the previous year. And then there was also capital outlay that was spent in the previous year that didn't get spent this year, which is why you see the decrease. Your property maintenance area increased this year due to additional costs within the cemetery. So additional number of burials caused increase in wages and other related expenditures. Your most significant category that changed was recreation and culture. You'll see that increased quite significantly. You spent about $1 million there. $350,000 of the increase is related to money that was contributed to the library. So some of you may remember, others may not because you're newer. In 2021, the normal contribution that is typically made to the library, it was decided to not make that, which is why that section kind of for 2021 decreased, and then this year we essentially made double that contribution. Additionally, within that category is going to be the restroom project at the parks. So that was pretty significant spending there. Executive administration remained relatively flat. We already touched on why fiscal services appears to have gone down at the gross level. It's probably relatively similar, just netting those differently. And then you have some other expenditures, and those kind of move up and down annually, but nothing too significantly in that category. So general fund spent in total about $5.1 million for the fiscal year. So then we'll take a look at fund balance here. So you can see that you are over the $3.5 million mark for fund balance at the end of 2022's fiscal year. You did have a decrease overall in fund balance of roughly $129,000. You had actually budgeted to spend approximately $398,000. So your actual came in really significantly better than what you had been budgeting. As far as, people always want to know, well, do we have a healthy fund balance or not? And that always depends on your city, what you have planned for the future. Many factors go into that. But one metric that people look at is fund balance as a percentage of your general fund expenditures. And for City of Alma, that percentage is roughly 70%. And we would consider that overall, without taking in, all the nuances of your community, that is a healthy fund balance. We realize that there are many struggles in funding at the municipal level, and costs are increasing more than many of us would probably believe they would for certain things. So we do understand that while you do have healthy fund balance, maintaining the budget can still be kind of challenging, because you want to make sure you're not going to spend down too much of your fund balance in any given year. All right, we'll change gears over into a couple of the utility funds. We'll start with the wastewater utility fund. Here you can see the top line gives you your net position, which is very similar to fund balance in your general fund. So for wastewater utility, you're at about $8.7 million at the end of the fiscal year. within that, you have about 3.2 million held in cash and investments. So really for that fund, a significant portion is actually in cash. That fund had operating income, just short of $1 million. So that's positive to see that your operating charges that are coming in from your residents are covering the operating costs, including depreciation, because that is considered an operating expense. And then that gives you some extra to be building up. So within that fund, at the end of the year, you had about 3.1 million in actual working capital, which is a metric we look at to see, okay, moving forward into my next year, what is there that's kind of extra that we could have if there's an emergency, if we have a large project we need to put some funds into, and can kind of help you with some of that longer term planning. On the water utility side then, we have total net position of about 5.9 million, and then total cash and investments of roughly 2.8 million. This fund, operating income, you do still have some, but it is not as significant. There was only about 22,000 in revenues that exceeded those operating expenditures. And this fund has roughly 2.7 million in working capital left at the end of the year. All right, long-term obligations here. So these are not balances you generally see in the fund statements that you probably look at. You probably don't really factor it into, your general fund budget because you're not making principal payments out of that fund. But overall, what is in your long-term debt as far as bonds continues to decrease. You haven't been issuing new debt. So at the end of the fiscal year, you had roughly 4.5 million in outstanding bonds. As far as compensated absences, which is the leave time that people build up and accumulate that they eventually can get paid out for, really that's pretty minimal for a city. It's about 257,000, and you'll see there's not a lot of variation from year to year with that number. On the long-term obligation side for the net pension liability, that liability has been decreasing the past few years. You'll see that's down to about 5.2 million. While that looks great, the next time you see this graph, it very likely is going to go back up because the valuation on those assets is done in December of the fiscal year you're in. So this is reporting investments, let me get this right, December of 2021. So the next time you see this, it will factor in December of 2022 investment values. And for those of you that stay up on the market was significantly down year over year. So that is going to impact this net pension liability. And I would suspect that it's going to increase again, but we'll see. Okay. We'll move over and talk about internal controls. While we are here and doing the audit, we look at many processes from the financial side of things. We talk with a lot of staff about what they're doing, maybe what they're not doing and they should be, and try to cover as many of the significant areas as we deem necessary in order to issue our opinion. And when we get done looking at all of the processes and the controls, and we look at what happened number-wise, and if we had adjustments to make, we assess overall what do internal controls look like. And so the city this year did receive 2 material weaknesses. And I'm going to talk about each of those, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of context for those of you that are newer, so that you can understand where you were and where you come from. Because I know if I'm on a board and I see that there's material weaknesses, I'm thinking problem, right? We have some problems we need to clean up. So we need to kind of quantify that and talk about it qualitatively. So the first material weakness was for audit adjustments. So I am ecstatic to announce that this material weakness was given only because there was one adjustment that happened to be a material dollar amount. In total, we only had 2 entries that we proposed to management to make. The one that was material related to state revenue sharing, and the payment that's received after June 30th needs to be accrued back and counted as revenue, and that particular entry was missed. That was about $235,000, so that actually was to the better for your general fund. To give you some historical context, 2 years ago, we actually had 53 audit adjustments, many of which were material. I didn't even go back and count them, I just saw there was 53 and I know many of them were material. Last year, we did have this finding, there were 14 total adjustments and 3 of those were material. So I think that the finance team really has done an excellent job of looking at our recommendations, really shoring up policies and procedures and getting more of the right people in the right seats, doing the right kind of tasks for their skill level. And all of that work really is showing that it's paying off. I honestly, 2 years ago, I thought it'd probably take at least 5 years for you to get where you are today. So while there is this material weakness, you have really come a long way, and that team really should be commended for the work that they're doing. I know that they take it very seriously, and I am sure that they were not very happy with themselves for missing this one item. And the thing about this one, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, like that's kind of an obvious one I should have done, but they've been cleaning up so many other things that, they're human too. The other material weakness relates to federal awards. And if you are going to be receiving and spending federal dollars, there's something out there called uniform guidance that oversees that spending and the rules and policies. And that says that you need to have written procedures over various areas. This is a finding that we have been giving for quite a few years. I'm not sure how many, but several years. If there were any material weaknesses last year that I would have said, get all of these done and save this one and maybe work on it in another year, this would be the one. The other issues that were resolved in budgeting and some other things, those were the most important of the material weaknesses in the previous year. And now this is something that's just much better practice for them to get shored up and taken care of. So I would anticipate that they're going to be working on this and possibly bringing something to you and that's an issue going forward now that they've had a chance to clean up other issues. The last item on here was only a management comment, but it did relate to electronic payments, and this is something I'd like people to be aware of because if there is fraud that might happen, this is an easier area for it to happen if there are not solid controls in place. So the issue that we have with this is that there are 2 people that can both initiate and approve wire transfers or electronic payments out. And we really would, the best recommendation we have is that if you have the authority to initiate those transactions, you should not be able to approve it on the banking side. That should be completely separate. If it's not going to be completely separate, then you need to have other controls in place that are specifically monitoring this to make sure that one person isn't moving money that shouldn't be. We did not see any evidence of someone moving money that shouldn't be. There is kind of a sign-off process in place, but it's still an area that should be looked at, and really if we can completely separate who's initiating and who's approving, then that's what should be done. If you have any questions on any of the financials or the controls, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, Ellie. Who has the first question?
I would just like to thank you. It was a much nicer report this year than it has been in the last 4 years. So
We
thank
have
you,
not
Curtis,
enjoyed
and your
audits in
team.
the past.
Usually we are here for a lot longer to hear and we're a little upset. So we thank you, Curtis, and your team, and thank you for providing this information to us.
Okay. echo that, Curtis, you've done a great job with your team, putting together a nice team in the first place and getting the right tasks in the right order and the right priorities, so appreciate that. Did have one question when you mentioned the segregation of duties on the electronic wires. The system allows the same person to both initiate and send that same amount?
Yes.
Okay. Is it a problem if, I mean, I've seen systems where you can initiate, but I can initiate one, but then I can't go ahead and transmit that.
Right. That's the way it should be.
That's the piece that's missing here. It's okay if I have, or if two of us have the authority to do both pieces, we just can't do both pieces of the same transaction. That's what we need to get, right? Okay. Curtis, do you know if the bank can offer that? Because
We do
that
believe,
should be pretty common.
yeah, there should be an option in there for it, yes. We've talked to the bank and we think we have a solution in place to clear that up.
Okay, great. All right. Appreciate it, and appreciate your work, and
And thanks, Curtis.
certainly, yes. Amazing progress.
Yeah.
Heads up, now that we know that the basics are covered, our expectations are gonna be raised for a number of other things we've been kind of chomping at the bit for here, so it's coming, Curtis. Okay, so if there's nothing else, we'll receive that report, you get a motion for that, please?
Support.
Got a motion to support, last chance for comments or questions, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried, reports received, thank you. Moving to appropriations, is anybody in favor of paying the bills tonight? The auditor's in the house. so. We have a motion? Get 'em?
I did, and Roxanne seconded it.
All right, okay, just wanna make sure we got them in there. Any comments or questions on the bills? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Commissioner comments? Roxanne, would you like to lead off tonight?
Just again, thank you, Ally, and thank you, Curtis, to your team. I'm grateful, thank you. And I don't think I have
Danny?
Just echo what Roxanne said, thank you, Curtis.
Roger?
Same thing, budgets have been something that we dreaded hearing about in past years. Oh geez, it's the audit. It's nice to hear the words clean and audit in the same sentence, so.
Lori?
I don't know anything different, so I'm going to expect it to be that good.
There you go.
But thank you, good job, guys.
Hey, Michelle?
Again, thank you, Curtis, and your team. And just thank, all the city workers that are out there fixing roads in a little warmer weather, catching it up when they can.
Yeah, and I don't know any different either, but that was
Trust
great
me,
news.
it's live.
so
It's excellent.
I appreciate the work. And I also note, I really appreciated this last weekend getting to attend some of the MML training. I thought that was really useful and would recommend that to anyone. I got done with it and then jumped into the Open Meetings Act handbook as well, went through that, and I like learning the ins and outs of those things. So it was really interesting.
All right, we have an expert on staff now. I like this. Sarah? Mr. Attorney?
Nothing, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just a couple things, thanks to Audra, for her years of service, I'm glad she was able to come in tonight, and, we'll get Nick on the next one. Yeah, Curtis and things that, Ally with coming in and helping out, her and I had a very long conversation and where we're headed for the future. And also, thanks to the rest of the staff, because the staff is actually helping make this happen too, so, but Curtis is leading that financial end of it, but staff is working more diligently on those things, so I appreciate everything that staff is doing.
Very good. Certainly echo that, congratulations, and thanks to Audrey for her years of service, not just on the commission, but to our community for lifetime, basically, so. Curtis, beyond excited about the results this time. Ally, thank you for everything you do, so appreciate that. And with that, we'll open up the floor to members of the public. We have one at least, I know that's, would like to address us, so please go ahead, Mr. Fortino.
say who we are and where we live.
Yes,
If I
you
remember
are.
correctly.
That is correct.
I'm from Fortino Arcata Township. I used to sit in Adams' seat for about 30-some years. I did, for 20 years, live almost kitty corner from the home that Steve has been telling you about. As I left to come over here, I asked my wife, so we left 19 years ago this month, we left the neighborhood. And I asked her, was 702 vacant when we left? And she said, oh yeah, that's 19 years ago. And, you know, Greg, you lived 2 doors down, and Eric, you were where you are now. It hasn't gotten any better. And to Adam's point, 20-some years ago, I can't say when, we used precisely the mechanism that Adam has suggested to deal with what we euphemistically refer to as the blue monster on Woodward, the 400 block of, or 500 block of Woodward on the east side of the street. We had a commission-appointed panel and a trial in this room, which resulted ultimately in demolition of that property. I don't know that demolition is appropriate in this case, but this is a beautiful neighborhood. I mean, it was a wonderful place to raise a family. If it were up to me, it would be on the cover of every promotional thing that the city sends out, and this is just such an eyesore. As a former resident who spent, as I say, 20 years there and absolutely loved it, I sure do hope that you'll help deal with this problem. Thank you.
Sure we will. Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it. Anybody else care to address the commission? Dan, are you? No? Jean did bring some cookies in tonight, so there are some cookies. We set them in the other room, but if anybody is so inclined, they look delicious. So thank you, Jan.
You're welcome.
Mr. Brown, anything? No?
Thank you for listening to me this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing this up. We do appreciate that. I'm sure we'll get it dealt with. Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn tonight.
So moved.
Motion support. All those in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.